Good morning, friends. Today is Thursday, May 26th, and in this video, I would like to discuss with you an ideological split among the Western elites becoming apparent at the World Economic Forum after Henry Kissinger and George Soros voiced drastically different views on Russian Federation and the special military operation it's currently conducting in Ukraine. To keep the video concise, I will not go into details on the backgrounds of these two men. I will trust you, my audience, to be familiar with these individuals and their careers, and simply draw your attention to what they said, using direct quotes in order to highlight their positions. I will share my analysis in as few words as possible and conclude by offering my opinion on which path I believe is most viable for the West to take in order to ensure the survival of our planet and the human race. But before I begin, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment in order to help me gain a voice in a debate for the future of our planet. My belief is that our top priority as Earthlings must be to ensure our survival, and it is precisely from this point of view that I begin today's discussion. And so, what exactly has been said by Mr. Kissinger and Mr. Soros? Both ancient men, both highly accomplished in their respective spheres, both hugely influential on global politics and economy. During a question and answer session at the World Economic Forum, Henry Kissinger voiced a pragmatic point of view when on the topic of the Russian Federation and its special military operation in Ukraine, he argued that, and I quote, movement toward negotiations and negotiations on peace must begin in the next 2 months. He followed this by explaining that in his view, Ukraine must have, I again quote, wisdom for the balance in Europe and the world at large, by which he meant that the conflict in Ukraine has shown itself to be a destabilizing global phenomenon and that Kiev's leadership must consider not just its own interests, but the interests of the global community. In regard to the Russian Federation, former Secretary of State reflected on the 400-year history of relations between Europe and Russia, and on the role Russia played historically as a balancing force, or in his words, as a guarantor of European stability. What he meant by this is that on several occasions it was Russia who had saved Europe, as it did, for example, in the 19th century from Napoleonic Empire, and in the 20th century, the Third Reich. Mr. Kissinger emphasized that the West's current policy toward the Russian Federation should be one of inclusion in order to prevent it from forming a permanent alliance with China. Furthermore, Mr. Kissinger argued that Ukraine must serve as a neutral bridge between Russia and Europe. Now, there is a lot to discuss even in this brief summation of Henry Kissinger's thesis, but for the sake of brevity, I will move on to what George Soros said. If you would like me to go into details about Mr. Kissinger's opinion, please let me know in the comments below. And if there is sufficient interest on this topic, I will gladly make another video on the subject because I found his position to be nuanced and balanced, and I would love to explore its strengths and weaknesses. These are of great importance to me personally. But moving on to George Soros and his remarks at the World Economic Forum. Mr. Soros sounded out a diametrically opposing view on a conflict in Ukraine and on the role the West must play in resolving it. To be blunt, George Soros, to my ear, sounded like a warmonger. The ancient oligarch, contrary to the manner in which the press often describes him, as a philanthropist, voiced a point of view which will be familiar to most of you. Namely, he spoke using the same arguments and rhetoric heard from the White House officials on the threat the Russian Federation poses to global security and on the necessity of the West to mobilize against Putin and the need to destroy both the President of the Russian Federation and his government. Mr. Soros said, and I quote, "The best and perhaps the only way to preserve our civilization is to defeat Putin. That's the bottom line." Mr. Soros understands bottom lines. After all, the oligarch made a fortune long before he became involved in global and domestic politics. After reading a transcript of his remarks, I understood him to view both the Russian Federation and China as threats to the kind of global order he would like to see dominate our planet. For him, the struggle unfolding in Ukraine is between good and evil. And in my opinion, excuse me, and in my opinion, Mr. Soros views himself as being on the side of the good. In such a struggle, there is no possibility of a peaceful resolution. There is no off-ramp. Only one side may emerge victorious. The other will be destroyed. And so this is the summary of two views on the crisis in Ukraine and the Russian Federation by the two old men who represent an ideological split between Western elites. On the one hand, you have Henry Kissinger, Realpolitik, a nuanced approach which strived to include, not isolate, to work together rather than destroy. And in Soros's point of view, the world order which the West has been so carefully constructing since the dissolution of the Soviet Union in the early 90s must be preserved at all costs, which of course will require a direct military confrontation with a nuclear power. In my opinion, it is this view that is most dangerous to all of us. Don't forget, it's the elites who wish to construct a global society operating on their rules and their rules alone, a monopolar world. They cannot tolerate others even attempting to share in this power, to coexist without being controlled by them and their ideology. George Soros's vision, frankly, frightens me. I don't want to live in a world dominated by people like him. Somehow, I just don't think they have my or your best interest at heart. They're simply wishing to assert total control over our planet and its resources. That's all for today. I hope you found this video interesting. Please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And of course, leave a comment below if you like. Thank you for watching. Until next time.